So, okay. So this talk is as you know, the title of the talk is listening. And 2 weeks ago, you might remember that I talked about beginningless karma. And I talked about it to illustrate that although we do not cause many things, anything from our past, from the past of our heritage, we are now accountable for our own predispositions and actions. And an interesting thing happened. Annie disputed something that I read, and it took a lot of courage for her to do that. And she brought up a point that I had not considered. And it was not easy for me to hear that. While she was talking, I watched my inner reactivity, and I was immediately kind of shocked and scared. And I felt defensive, and I started to construct a counter argument. Because I really wasn't sure what to do. I thought of invoking my authority as a teacher and correcting her. And I noticed how uncomfortable I felt. And I realized, oh, this is discomfort. And interestingly enough, my stepson's girlfriend, who is Black, we'd taken a walk together, and in a discussion about racism, she mentioned, I notice that white people have a hard time dealing with their discomfort because I don't like being told that I said or did something wrong. And this is applicable to my personal life as well as my public life. And one thing that I'm now coming to understand, that in our racialized society, at this critical juncture, time of great sensitivity by all people, Black people and people of color are telling us, white people, that we're doing something wrong, and it makes us very, very uncomfortable. And our first instinct is to resist in some way. And this experience, she wrapped up in one word, discomfort, which I think is a very helpful word. Now, so I thought, I need to talk about listening because I've just had an experience of discomfort. And it happened to be on a topic that's related to racism, but it doesn't have to be. It can be any experience of discomfort in conversation with another person, but particularly when someone has an opposing view. And so it's when it's hard that listening is probably the most important. And in Buddhist practice, listening is central. Most of us find it, we listen to ourselves in meditation. That's one of our central practices. Our practice of meditation is both concentration and insight. And insight is a result of listening to ourselves. Initially, that's the first part of insight, I think. Now, most of us find this really hard at first, and even sometimes later on, when we've been meditating for a long time. But at first, it's really hard because we start to see so many things that we experience in our body, heart, and mind that we weren't aware of. Just sitting still and listening is hard. There's a lot going on, and some of it is quite unpleasant. Our meditation practice teaches us to just sit very still, breathing quietly, listening to the chatter, noticing our emotions, doing and saying nothing. And in this practice, we come to know and understand ourselves as dynamic, complex, vulnerable, whole human beings, and to accept ourselves as we are. As Suzuki Roshi said, perfect, you're perfect just as you are, but you just need a little improvement. I think the perfection is not about good or bad, but about wholeness or completeness. I think that a consistent meditation practice is a wonderful preparation for learning to listen fully to others without jumping up and running away or turning on the TV or hitting the other person with a stick. I don't know if any of you have ever had that desire to hit your person that you're conversing with in the confines of your home, if you ever wanted to hit them with a stick or something else. But with our Zen practice, we've cultivated the ability to abide peacefully with ourselves, not hitting ourselves with a stick, or noticing when we tend to go in that direction, to hit ourselves with sticks. And so once we have work on this and cultivate the ability to abide peacefully with ourselves, we can begin to do so with others. And that it's a really, really helpful way to bring your practice to your life. So I have some arrows here, so I'm supposed to go to some other place. Yeah, okay. So as I say, in the meditation, we learn to listen to ourselves in the great space of awareness, taking the backward step into the attentive, non-judgmental space of gentle and clear awareness, attending fully to ourselves. And if you've ever had a good therapist, you know what an incredible gift it is to be listened to without judgment. And that's what we learn to do in Zazen. Even learning to see and accept the self-judgment, to be seen and to be accepted as who we are. And again, and as I've said so many times, when we build this capacity within, we have it to offer to others. So, and learning to accept ourselves, we learn to accept others. And this is the greatest gift that we can offer to ourselves and to others. So in the fall of 2009, I attended a workshop on conflict resolution given by two lawyers who are students of Norman Fisher at Green Gulch Farm, which is a Zen community owned by San Francisco Zen Center in Marin County. And the whole program could be summarized as listening to understand, and understanding does not imply agreement. So I want to read you something from a book by one of the teachers in that program. His name was Gary Friedman. He's a lawyer who specializes in mediation. And so this program was really mainly for lawyers, but so much of it was applicable to our life that I felt I really learned a lot from it. But this is what he talks about, what happened to him as he developed his mediation practice and began to be more and more influenced by a Zen practice. Meditation gave me regular practice with noticing, even if just to notice I drifted off. And I knew that translated into my work, sometimes rather dramatically, other times in subtle ways. I was struck by how, when I remembered to pay attention to my body and reaction, I was different as the emotions in the room intensified. Rather than shy away, I found myself more engaged. I became curious about what was going on with the parties and in myself. When I was afraid, I would often notice that I was afraid. When I didn't know what to do, I often noticed that as well, and on occasion I would voice it. Being vulnerable instead of all-knowing changed the chemistry in the room for the better. I became much more confident that I didn't need to control what happened to be effective. And more importantly, when things became heated, I was able to notice myself and not get so caught up in the swirl of upset, including my own. So a little bit more about what's involved with listening. Attention, which is a cognitive act. And it doesn't have it isn't a place or a thing. It's an act. Willingness, a willingness to stay there, open-heartedness, humility, which I think a lot of this we see in Gary's paragraph. And so importantly, an ability to track ourselves at the same time and to bracket our own needs and concerns. It's not the same as making our needs and concerns go away. We still know them. We kind of put them on hold. And strangely, noticing ourselves and our own reactivity, especially when the going gets tough, increases our ability to stay engaged in relationship, to listen fully, to understand, and to be able to respond constructively. Because if we're swept away by our reactivity, we can't listen. If we don't notice our reactivity, we're not really connected. And this is a process that Gary calls self-reflection. And here's what he says about it. An intentional effort to be receptive to ourselves, which means paying attention moment by moment to feelings, thoughts, and bodily sensations as they move through us. Self-reflection is not daydreaming or musing about ourselves. It is not self-analysis. It is not even just thinking. Instead, it's an effort to stay open to what comes. It hasn't been easy for me to hear how some of my behavior that I thought was at least neutral and at best helpful has helped me to perpetuate the experience of discrimination and exclusion that Black and people of color experience. And I talked about this a little bit last time, the difference between intention and impact. I have an intention, but I don't control my impact. It makes me feel scared and ashamed, and I want to defend my actions or apologize and be forgiven. But if I do that, the attention shifts to me rather than to the one whom I've hurt. And I need, as my stepson's girlfriend reminded me, to learn to abide with my discomfort and to listen to understand. When the hurt is heard, the conversation toward healing, repair, and reconciliation has a chance of moving forward. Listening has to happen first. I'm applying this idea to how I think white people need to listen to non-white people. But of course, it applies to every relationship. And you can practice it at home. This is something you can try at home with your partner or with your friend or your parent or your child. Next time, watch yourself and see what happens. Everyone needs listening to. And the secret is when you listen, you have a greater chance of being listened to and your point of view being considered. And even if you're not, even if it isn't considered and the person doesn't listen to you, it's okay because you have been listening to yourself. And there's a chance for something to move and change. So I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments on this